So right. So just a prelude. At the end of my transportation-oriented episode, like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
I ended with an article talking about how Birmingham in UK were looking to adopt a Ghent-style plan. And that article didn't go into what the Ghent kind of style plan was. So I looked up what it was, and it actually was the kind of thing where it's like, I need to tell people about this. This is really
Oh,
exciting
cool.
because otherwise, especially here in America, with liberals leading the way, even though we can get liberals to adopt the goal of like, oh yes, less car dependency, more bikes and
Hmm.
buses, but getting it done, especially through market mechanisms or the whole like gradual change, it shouldn't take 50 years to undo what it took 10 years to do,
Yeah.
which was to destroy our city with highways,
Yeah.
and car infrastructure.
Hmm.
Even though it maybe took 20, 30 years to break in, it shouldn't take 50 years to break out, especially when we're facing down the climate crisis.
Absolutely.
So it seems like just like the whole like it's easier to imagine apocalypse than utopia.
Hmm.
We need to imagine how we transition away from car-based cities, and it's in Holland and in other European cities, especially, but mostly in Flanders and Belgium, where they are leading the way with how you do it. And to maybe a left libertarian, it seems, well, it brings up issues of what it really means to be left libertarian or how useful to use the label libertarian, liberty first, consent, whatever,
Hmm.
um, because you're not going to solve these problems without pissing some people off.
Yeah.
Similar to, you know, I get into these weird conversations with mass, like about mass.
Hmm.
One leftist is like, it's like a punishment. Why should I have to like why should we mandate for the general public that's been vaccinated to protect the unvaccinated, or because they were phrasing this as being punished
Yeah.
to need a mask, or the fact that we're going with general rules as if we're still in lockdown
Hmm.
rather than using the vaccine passport to basically block the unvaccinated from public life.
Hmm.
And the reason is it would be, and my answer was, it's more of a hassle to get checked at every door or every institution for your vaccine pass than it is to just put on a mask and act like everyone is a carrier or a possible carrier. Because even me who's vaccinated, like, to take out the mask and put it on is less work than having the social effort of having whipping my wallet out and having my card ready
Hmm.
and asking other service workers to need to enforce and to ask for your vaccine passport or to enforce the rules
Hmm.
of whether who has a mask and who doesn't, because obviously the unvaccinated are not going to wear masks anyway,
Right.
um if it's a matter of the if you use the what do you call it, the honor system,
Yeah.
because we seem to be using the honor system when it comes to transitioning to better habits,
Hmm.
like not being dependent on a car,
Hmm.
maybe being vegan, and other things like that. And that's just not. It's too slow. I mean, ideally, there's the whole like we use argumentation, we model good behavior, and that's how we change minds and do things. But it's a slow process, and we all on streams and whatever, we see in many ways all of the dumbness and bullshit, in dumb ways people interact with each other.
Hmm.
Don't you just want to give up and embrace your inner authoritarian?
I mean, actually, yeah. I think at this point, uh, just coming at it from a bodily autonomy standpoint, it's the lesser transgression to just say, all right, everyone's got to be vaccinated now. You know,
Yeah.
um, I
Even though my upstairs neighbor says like it messed with her period. Um, I'm like, that's still, I mean, it's still a small price to pay. I mean, I'm not, unless it's messed up forever, but I don't know.
mhm.
The, but I'll also lean back to Hakeem video about the word, like this false split between libertarian and authoritarian,
Mhm.
that these words are not that useful when you're a leftist. That, when we're talking about collective responsibility and action and governance, that a lot of these concepts aren't useful
I
for
can
what's
see
good
that.
and what's bad.
I can see that. I can see that.
I'm just saying, like, if you're part of the group that's forcing something on someone else, you're the bad guys.
Mhm.
That is as immature as an Ayn Rand
Right.
character
Right.
is. It's
Yeah.
it's also flat.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very
So anyway,
childish view of
on with the
force.
show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's learn about Ghent's
Gens.
transition to
Let's
their
do.
plan.
Very cool.
The atmosphere has just completely changed over the last 10 years in the sense that walking and cycling has become very natural and very normal for everyone.
It's important to show at the inhabitants, the car drivers, the cyclists, that we mean it.
In Ghent, we have a good tradition of spatial planning.
We
We
mean
mean
it.
it for the
We're
whole
not
city,
freaking
and we mean it
around
for
anymore.
neighborhoods.
There's
Mm-hmm.
more and more people biking here in Ghent, especially since the circulation plan in the city center. It became a lot calmer, much more space for bikers to go, less cars.
The circulation plan was really needed because there was a lot of problem in the city with congestion, but also with livability.
To meet people, to have a nice time, that's what the city is about. The circulation plan is very important for Ghent, very important for life quality. We have an area where there are 7 parts. There's a car-free zone in the center and then 6 parts around it. For pedestrians, for cyclists, for public transport, nothing changed, but for car drivers, something changed. If they wanted to go from one part to another part, they had to go to the ring road. There was no connection between the parts possible with the car. So you get fewer cars.
So this is the key part here. That's the
We
key
are here
part.
at the N40, as we called it in Ghent, which is the inner ringway. If you have to go from one section to another section, you have to pass via this ringway. This means that you see a lot more cars here.
So since the circulation
So I gather that it's kind of like a hub and spoke system, but you have to go along the spokes out to the hub in order to get from section to section. Is that what I'm hearing? So it's
If
it's
you're in
it's
if you're in a
if
car.
you're in a car, so it's purposely making things more difficult for car travel, right?
Exactly. And that's
Cool.
like the whole, like, oh, but that's authoritarian, or that's reducing my choices.
Oh, that's so
Well,
BS.
so does car
Absolutely,
supremacy.
absolutely.
That it reduces my choices as someone who's on foot or on a bike.
Uh
It
huh.
makes things more dangerous for me, and because of constant car use, it makes a lot of the roads hard to ride on, and reduces the amount of roads I can even use my bike on.
Right.
So again, they have canals and stuff, so it's kind of really easy to just say no cars can like go down. You can kind of
Yeah.
create these choke points. Albany and other cities have maybe topography, but I feel like they would need a different strategy to make this work. Plus, Albany doesn't have a complete ring road. We do have a fairless highway on 2 sides of the city, but not the other 2 sides,
Mm-hmm.
which is the interstate that has a toll.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, like I think in the original highway plan, there would be a complete ring road, but a lot of sections of road and stuff were blocked,
Oh,
rightfully so. But it doesn't stop the city from being filled with cars.
sure.
And so it's about lessening intercity traffic.
Ah.
Cars going, people using cars for short trips. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not getting in your car unless you're actually leaving the inner city. Um, or so on. Otherwise, you'll probably use the bus to go from one neighborhood to another. And I feel like that could work in Albany.
Yeah.
I need to sketch it out.
Sure.
But it's an actual idea that could be implemented, because otherwise the alternative that comes to mind is just kind of having a pedestrian street or pedestrian district.
Yeah.
Or like you're slowly pedestrianizing more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a chicken and the egg problem.
Right.
No one wants to pedestrianize or limit cars anywhere.
Yeah.
Because it just messes the traffic system up.
Yeah.
I think if you do all of it all at once like this, or at least in sections, I think that has the lasting impact, and it's basically it'll work instead of just like saying we're going to get we have to put down all these protected bike lanes. You'll see in the rest of the video. So let's just keep going.
Yeah, let's keep going. The circulation plan has been introduced. We can see that there's absolutely a decrease in the number of cars in the city, an increase in walking and cycling. It also goes hand in hand with the parking measures that have been introduced. So we have more parking on the border of the city, and people just walking or cycling or using public transport to enter the city.
The circulation plan was actually part of the mobility plan that also included the parking plan, a plan to enroll a cycling network in the city of Ghent. And the targets within the mobility plan were set on 35% of cycling in 2030. Now, 2 years after the circulation plan, we have a mode share of 35%, which was actually the target for 2030. So it seems that we have to rethink about the targets.
We're standing
Yeah.
at the Coupure.
Once you actually take like we're going to actually limit the supremacy, the transition is immediate. It doesn't take 20, 30 years. It actually happens a lot faster because people are actually adaptable.
Yeah. You're resetting the normal.
This is, exactly. This is seen like plastic bag use when you institute a plastic bag fee, or better, a ban. So the transition to people not paying for bags, whether they're paper or plastic, and using reusable bags, it didn't go up to 35%. It went up to 80% of people using canvas bags and tote bags. So, and only it seems people with maybe mental issues or executive order issues can't remember to bring their reusable bags. Or really put upon families, maybe, but
sure.
I'm just thinking of the exceptions.
Yeah. There's always going to be exceptions, but yeah.
Just like how the disabled need cars and stuff, so you'll
Absolutely.
see some parking, see some car use, but these should be the exceptions for this.
Yeah, not the rule.
So yeah. Let's go to the next part, which I really like.
Sure.
Bike street in Ghent, and before it was too narrow. Like you see, there's this narrow passage on the side. People were biking there. It became impossible to pass on both directions. So now bikers are driving on the streets just beside there, and they've got the whole street for them. It became a bicycle street by law also, which means cars can't overtake bikers anymore, so they have the whole space of the street just for them.
Speed limit is 30 kilometers an hour here. That way,
you
see that.
I just want to express my frustration of how bullshit. Like, have you encountered the Asheros?
Yes. Yeah. Like that
policy of like, we're encourage bike use by putting up signs that say that bikes may use the car lane. I would really like people who put up those signs to actually bike in such a street. Although I guess they do. It is possible, but you do not really feel safe doing so.
Right.
And it's always insulting. They're like, "Oh, what's the problem? You have a 4-foot wide lane." And especially when that lane is on like the very edge of the road, where the sewer, it's basically the same width as the sewer grates.
Yeah.
So basically, to travel through a bike lane, I have to basically go through every sewer grate, and sometimes the sewer grates, they're not flat.
No.
Sometimes they're quite a dip. So I basically have to swerve out of. So basically, these are lanes that I would never actually use. is I have to swerve every block or every half block out of the lane. Not safe.
Not safe at all. No.
So to see the city go like, because we restricted car traffic enough that even if it is allowed, it's still a bike street first.
Yeah.
And that's great. And in a different video that doesn't show up here, but it was a different video of strategies where one city simply just allowed car traffic, but just removed all the parking.
Mm-hmm.
So without free parking, suddenly people aren't encouraged to drive so much.
Amazing how that works. Amazing how, yeah,
Amazing.
putting that little.
But you incentivize.
Uh-huh.
And so on. And if cities want to like, it's insulting when city says, my liberal city says, we want to incentivize bike riding, but they only have one like bike to work day a year.
Yeah.
And will not actually spend any money, nor you don't really have to spend money to just say there's no parking on the street anymore.
Right. Yeah. You just eliminate it. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Let's move on here because it is getting late.
Cyclists are taking it a little bit over, and it is quite safe, and you don't always need separate bike lanes.
If you want to set up a cycling street, you really need a street with a low intensity of cars. And actually the circulation plan gave us the chance to increase the number from 8 cycling streets in 2017 to 18.
We can go by bicycle to our working place, to school, and so on. 20 years of consequent politics that direction to make it a sustainable and a social city also.
That you can just let children walk and cycle alone to school, for example. So working on modal shift is really important, and making sure that this mind shift is there, that people just automatically choose sustainable modes of transport.
30% of the inhabitants of Ghent don't own a car anymore, and raising their kids with the idea it's not necessary to have a car. Ghent has an ambition to be the biggest city of car sharing systems, so hopefully in the future the new generation will be used to that idea that you can use a car whenever it's needed, but you don't have to own it.
We have many rivers in Ghent. And in the 60s, they filled up the rivers to get parking spaces for cars.
Oh,
1 year ago,
that's insane.
it was still a parking for cars. And we reopened the river. This is important that we give water a place in the city. If you
Yeah, so it was actually,
parking
okay, yeah,
spaces,
so I
then
mentioned like,
it's
okay,
always
maybe it's easier
travel.
for Ghent because they have these canals. Actually, no, they didn't have the canals. They were
Yeah.
paved over.
They had to
So
re-daylight them.
the circulation plan comes first, the plan of action, and all the other good stuff is only possible because they did the limiting of cars and car traffic. So that's a good like battle plan going forward, to have the plan first and actually do it.
Yeah.
To look at what Ghent had to spend to implement it, I'm thinking they didn't have to spend a lot. I think new signs. I know that in the PowerPoint I read, it was more about like changing what the direction, putting in more one ways,
All right.
so that you couldn't legally go into this neighborhood
Right.
from this direction, basically. So it wasn't about. Sometimes it was probably about putting physical things down, but that's not that much money.
No.
You
And
certainly don't need to pave everything,
right.
which is how like most people, at least in my area, talk about changing hard infrastructure. Like, oh yeah, well, like with we have a complete streets plan, meaning that when the streets are repaved, that they're repaved, that if applicable or if possible, put in a bike lane or with multimodal transportation
Right.
in mind. Complete bullshit.
Right.
Every street that's paved is just paved, and because it's non-binding, it's just a directive for the planning department or whatever, OGS,
Right.
DGS, the pavers, but they're all blue collar guys that don't give a shit. I want to say something about the bike. Was it the bikes or the go back a minute? Because we'll stop here.
Sure. Let's see.
Just want to find a word. Before mentioning the canals, it was the speed limit or the bikes? It was more about the bikes and the mind shift. Yeah, okay. So
Somewhere around here, maybe?
yeah, no, I guess I covered what I wanted to say. That like they started with the circulation plan first, and everything else has been done in the last 5 years. That they've been able to just change things around. And yeah, or I wanted to give the anecdote that like in my city, it's just been so slow, and just giving like cyclists minimum amendments was like seen as impossible. And oh wow, there's actually like a total of 5 bike hitches in the city.
Yeah.
Shouldn't I like I'm basically being told to be patient and to just keep agitating, I guess. But I don't want to agitate for just like little bit more bike amenities, one more bike lane, or a road diet. I want to get serious about this.
For sure.
And it's insulting how unserious any of the planners or city leaders are on this in any city.
Yeah.
That like maybe they have a pedestrian district or a block or a street, and they're like, look how we're really transitioning.
Right.
No, you're not.
No,
you're not.
It's hardly even a
You're not
Band-Aid.
changing the traffic flow. Unless you're actually changing the traffic flow, don't suggest anything. Yeah. And it's interesting that again, didn't have to build new roads. They didn't have to build.
No.
I mean, it seems like I don't know if the trams are already existing or not.
It looks like they've been there for a couple decades at least.
Sure.
But yeah, and think too much how much they're going to save on infrastructure repair over the course of time. Yeah. Bikes are a nothing impact. I mean, the rain does more damage to the roads than bikes do. So.
Right. But like it just frustrates me to no end that like potholes, northeastern city here, and a street can be repaved. It looks really nice for a total of 3 months.
Right.
And the cracks already start to show by month 6, and by 3 years it looks exactly like it did like same. Before the paving.
Yep.
Which is the case with my street, which was repaved total of I think 2.5, 3 years ago. Now it has just as deep, foot deep potholes and stuff because we get ice and we get snow, and apparently after 50 years, the asphalt that gets put down hasn't changed an iota. It still just breaks apart as soon as it gets cold.
Asphalt is horrible stuff.
Yeah, and it's mostly because it breaks up because there's so much car traffic that even as a city of 100,000, we get another 50,000 commuters come in, and so it's not just all the local traffic going back and forth, which is pretty difficult, and it makes the local streets dangerous for kids and whatever.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing. We have all these commuters coming in via local roads, and that's kind of or the main avenues that we have, as well as the highways.
Yeah.
But imagine if we put it all on the highways. Like you're not commuting in Albany unless you're coming in on what's called 787 via River Highway. It will actually get clogged for miles, even like it doesn't really now, but it will. And they might actually just think about using those park and rides.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah. Exactly.
Some park and rides more. Using these other buses that come in for state workers.
For sure. Yeah. Good incentives for that. All right. I do want to keep going though.
For people who are parking, it's always very important they have their space. But what is
I want to do that.
amazing is that
the stand-up paddleboard.
The parking space.
Yeah, I've never want to.
Oh, you never would want to.
I've never seen it before. I'm like, what is that?
It's gotten pretty popular
crazy.
Here in Minnesota.
Crazy. It was crazy, Dutch.
Yeah.
This is a new piece of infrastructure to get.
Well, he just talks about this underpass
and safe manner to the city center, because it was very hard for people who are living at the eastern side of the city to get in the center, and now with this underpass, it's possible to get in the center on a safe manner.
lot of cars means a lot of pollution. The city council really wanted to try to do something else and to be really innovative.
For me, Utrecht and Groningen are example cities, iconic cities for pedestrians and cyclists. But
Groningen.
what they have done is amazing.
Well, at one point we got a call from the vice mayor of Ghent, and he was interested in what we were doing in Utrecht with the bicycle program. So my vice mayor, she invited him, and we showed him around, and he liked what we were doing very, very much.
They have such a high level of quality, and that was very hard for us to get at that same level. So what we did is not to get the same things as in Utrecht, because it should take 10, 20, 30 years also. We took a shortcut, and with the circulation plan we made space for pedestrians and cyclists without the hard and expensive infrastructure.
And this plan worked very well, and the inhabitants accepted it as well. Some little adjustments were done, but in general I think he did a real good job, I think.
Shortcut, but yeah, like great.
So we're here at one of the places where they cut a street in two. Before this used to be a road where you could go in both directions with a car. Now you can't anymore. With a bike you can still pass, and there's also still space for the buses and taxi drivers to go over this bridge, but normal cars can't go anymore. They use cameras here. The camera reads the license plate of the car, and then they get a fine afterwards if they did cross. So they place these things here, these planters, these benches, so people can sit here, but also to show that it is not longer a road where cars can pass in both directions, to make it a sign like here you have to stop and you have to turn around or go another way.
Here this is one of the most important cuts we made. You can't get from one area to another, but if they come with a car in the city center, they get in and immediately they get out. Very simple. The cut is signed by the red strips, the traffic signs, the red blocks there, and sometimes there are, how would you call it, play elements. And this is better also for cyclists. If they come here, there are almost no cars, except services and taxis. All that period, 2.5 years, there was much debate and a very rough debate. I had some death threats, so this was not easy for me.
The first day when the circulation plan went live, there was national media coverage, and they all went to Ghent to see will it work.
There was a lot of commotion in the city about what would happen. A lot of people thought Ghent would die, nobody would come to Ghent anymore, all the shops would have to close.
A lot of people, even Dutch people, told me, well, the plan that you're going to implement, that's political suicide 1 year before the elections. You can't do that.
They really went with a very negative image. It won't work, guys, you see, we're gonna say it won't work. But the truth was, it really went very smooth.
The moment it started, on April 2017, everything changed. After that rough period of 2.5 years, I came outside with the journalists. I took a trip with the bike through Ghent, and everywhere people said, congratulations, very good, we are very pleased with it.
After that, national media really needed to change, to admit that it is a good plan and it's working.
I also got emails from, for example, parents that said, thanks for introducing the circulation plan. It's actually the first time that I'm really happy with just my kids on the streets, and I'm not anxious anymore when they are biking.
If there is political will to make really good changes towards more walking and cycling and really making the city more pleasant and happy, that also on political level people get rewarded for it.
If you design a city for cars, you get cars. If you design a city for people, you get people.
Damn.
It doesn't get much more simpler than that. You design the city
My
for cars,
God.
you get cars. You design the city for people, you get people. That's absolutely true.
Now, my only kind of like maybe pessimism is that even when it like looking at the road cuts and those like red blocks and stuff, like my city, I can't even imagine them paying for that. Like
Yeah.
but we do have the money. So like if the if enough interest groups can be like kind of like brought together. The thing is, the bikers, cyclists agitated for quite a while just for like the complete streets plan,
Yeah.
which of course again doesn't amount to much.
No, it still gives way too much to
But
cars.
we get fig leaves every step of the way. I'm wondering like who do I even organize to kind of agitate for this?
Right.
And I suppose it could start with everyone who's ever had a family member die in a car accident, car crash, or something like that. It could be everyone who's ever complained. I mean, there's probably enough people, so maybe with enough canvassing and organizing could be done.
Yeah.
I'm just unsure. There's no one currently in local government that probably would like buy this.
Yeah, you're right.
Maybe I could get like a few converts, but a few. The rest are just too boneheaded.
Right.
And
well,
because we don't even have a single pedestrian block or anything like that. And what we have spent money on is something out of the way, like a skyway. We're converting a on-ramp to that river highway I mentioned. That is, it's used so little that basically no one uses it. And that is what we will convert into our version of the High Line, which such a phony version of the High Line because it just loops. It's literally a big loop.
Okay.
That's crossing the highway. So it's basically a glorified overpass.
Okay.
And you have the frickin' urbanist page calling it like Albany's newest park. I'm so mad at them for the way they talk about stuff because like this is a project only they wanted or could be excited about. No one else in the city was excited for this. Only the business district downtown I think cares because they think that it's going to bring more tourists or visitors or something.
Sure.
But as shown, what brings people around is designing or making new rules for people and stop servicing cars.
Right.
Take the budget for the Albany Parking Authority and put that into building the curb cut. So we do have the money for it, and we could certainly take out a bond to pay for it.
Yeah.
So it's not a money issue really. It's just the will. So
yeah. Well, I think if you play up the reduction in infrastructure maintenance costs angle, the idea that it's going to mean less traffic for the people that still do drive, less drunk people on the road, less texters on the road.
Yeah. I think it when it comes down to like everyone can complain about these things, but they can't imagine that they need a circulation plan.
Right.
But you can list all the pros, and that can be enough. I think I have to believe that could be the case. But at the other side of it, all the progressives that I would think would be on board with such a thing, they're also the type of people that say the bums are too close to me and I want them out.
Yes.
My way.
Yeah.
So that comes to mind again. It makes me depressed, but
Yeah, for
but,
sure.
but they're the people that I've interacted with, but there's thousands of others that I haven't that probably would agree. But they probably say, well, I commute by car outside of Albany. And I'm like, but that it may only change their commute slightly. That they'll be going this way. It's just a detour, really.
Right.
Especially if they're commuting outside of Albany.
Yeah.
If your commute is inside of Albany, then use the buses.
Yeah, use the buses, use a bike.
Because right now there's no incentive to do that. There's no incentive.
Right.
Unless you have to. It's still in the realm of have to.
Yeah. I feel that too. And even just in my neighborhood, I'm 2 blocks away from like a couple different grocery stores and a cafe and stuff like that. And but there's just really busy streets that I would have to cross to get to any of those. So a lot of the time, it's like, might as well just
Yeah.
drive. I hate admitting
The
that, but it's true.
walkability, yeah, I know that with enough car congestion, everything is made
Mm.
unwalkable,
Right,
even when you're two blocks away.
right.
Um, and this is exemplified in some of the new urbanist meme pages where it shows like the to walk from one, like it'll basically show two places that are basically a block apart, or even maybe they're adjacent,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a fence, they're not connected.
Right.
So to get from one address to another takes like an hour walk. And I have been in such situations where either I'm in a city or some context, and I notice like I want to go from here to here, and the actual foot route is a mile or something like that.
Yeah,
And
it's ridiculous.
or it's not a different city. It's in my own city, but it's on like the outside of the street grid. As soon as you leave the street grid, everything is half mile apart.
Right.
Like from a bus stop to, here, that's literally blocks away.
Mhm.
But because of car infrastructure, it's an ordeal.
Right.
And
Right.
kind of reminds me of this clip from an old Chevy Chase movie, Planes, Trains, and
Oh, I
Automobiles.
love that movie.
There's a section where he's going from like the airport to where like the car rental is,
Right. I think yeah. I
but there's
recall
no
that.
shuttle or anything, and he has to basically cross a highway, but there's not
Right.
just the highway, but there's the embankments, and he's getting all muddy and shit, and it's just like
Uh-huh. And it's like
that was
right over
America
there.
then, and of course nothing's really changed, depending on where you are. Okay, so we should wrap up
Yeah,
then.
we should probably
Let you
wrap
go
up.
to bed.
Yeah.
And I got my trip tomorrow, so
Yeah, and good luck on your trip there. Safe travels.
yeah. So then we do this again to
Definitely.
finish the videos we didn't get to, which are plenty interesting and informative.
Yeah, and that Ghent one, man, that was very eye-opening. That gives me
Yeah,
one
isn't
more
it
thing
though? I mean, I love it. To find like it goes way beyond like Freiburg, where half the city uses public transport,
right.
and that was basically when I was in college, so it's probably even more now.
Mm-hmm.
But it meant like they're light years ahead of us in
Yeah.
transitioning, and this is mostly because they don't have a big fossil fuel industry in Europe. So they're not like their policy making isn't
as
corrupted
influenced by it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there's
Makes
BP
sense.
inside, but they don't have the oil production. So yeah, so that's my newest episode, Urbanist Angst or Anxiety, because I'm basically covering the issues overall. The next episode will be more about land reform and
Ooh, land reform.
things
Good
like that,
stuff.
and actually decommodifying houses, which streamers like Hassan has mentioned over and over.
Uh-huh.
But what he isn't good at covering is how to do so.
Right.
And it isn't going to be some long transition of one housing co-op at a time, because you can have New York City where there's tons of housing co-ops, a very high rate of growth in housing co-ops, but it obviously has maybe just put a little dent in housing costs in New
Right.
York City.
Oh, there's so much
Eventually,
more need, yeah.
you kind of have to get serious and start expropriating property or infringing property.
Yep.
Is kind of what it comes down to. And the thing about the circulation plan is it doesn't. The thing is with that, you're not touching private property at all,
Mm-hmm.
but you are affecting what people can do with their private property, their
Absolutely.
car, and that's what pisses people off.
Yep.
You're telling me what to do, what I can do with my car.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that's all roads.
Yeah.
That's all roads.
Yeah.
And all speed limits and all one ways. And,
Uh-huh.
But of course, you have a lot, good amount of people who just do not follow any road laws whatsoever. They're true anarchists, I guess. They, speeding and left on red and
Yep. I see
whatever.
it from time to time.
Whatever's most convenient for them,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of how dangerous or threatening it is to anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess makes them as annoying as an underclass person. but they have a car to sleep in, I guess. But I'm just saying
legitimate
that, like,
reasons.
don't say that addicts in the street are like the people who are disrespectful. I find most drivers going through my city to be disrespectful to me
Absolutely.
because I feel for my life
Oh yeah.
all the time across the main avenues,
Yep.
knowing that like this avenue is treated like their highway.
Right. Yeah.
But
It's their domain.
but the whether it's the black neighborhoods that are flanking the main avenue, we're walking, we're trying to do our shopping, we're trying to live, and this Central Avenue is still just someone's highway,
Right.
moving through
Through
Albany,
space. Yeah.
through space at 35 miles per hour.
Which is lethal.
Maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe. But
Yep.
they're usually 40 if they can.
If they can get away with it, if it's straight
if they can
off.
get away with it, which they usually do.
Yep. Yep.
Because we don't have speed cameras every block.
Yeah.
We have red light cameras in some areas,
Mm-hmm.
but speed cameras are better at actually making people drive safer.
Hmm.
Because the red light cameras just make people actually gun it, so they're not getting, they're not actually going through a red light.
They can avoid the
Yeah.
picture. Yeah.
I mean, they reduced sideswipe crashes, but they increased back-end crashes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I covered this in the transportation episode previous, the urban one.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good one.
But not previous. I covered that. I covered that in the spring actually.
Oh, okay.
Because I was dovetailing it with traffic enforcement and then Black Lives Matter and
Sure.
And then how like traffic licensing, driving licensing is completely bogus. Doesn't make anyone safer.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you don't even need to like take a new test or anything, and the test itself sucked. It's just terrible.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I'm really excited to get into this latest episode of yours. I love stuff about mass transit. So very cool. All right. Well, thank you again for joining me yet another time, and we shall definitely revisit these issues at a later date, probably in a couple weeks or so. We'll get back together and talk about some more urbanist issues.
Yep. Hey, you like the new website, by the way?
Yeah, it's looking really nice and clean. I like it a lot.
It's pretty much all it does. It's definitely not pretty, but it's cleaner.
Yeah. No, it's eye-catching. It's very easy to navigate, so it's looking really good.
Yeah. It's just a simple theme change, really.
Sure.
Okay. Toodles.
All right. Yeah. Have a great day. Stay mad. All right. All right. So that was Dan Plaat of the Three Left Show. I'm going to bring back on the full screen there. So you can go to threelefts.news to check out all his stuff. I'm going to take away all that stuff for right now. So yeah, it doesn't have to take huge revolutions to change a city and its traffic flows, as we saw from that case study in Ghent. Now, obviously, they had a lot more political will on the ground, but everyone has to start from somewhere. So that potentially could be a cause that any of you could take up in your local city. At least just start thinking about some of these ideas of giving back streets to the people. There's a podcast episode I want to cover at some point. It's called The Modern Moloch. It's from 99% Invisible, and it tells the story of how the streets were basically given over 100% to cars in America, and how it was basically a campaign from automakers and tire makers and the like, that they all basically colluded together to launch these ad campaigns to start anti-jaywalking laws. Jaywalking was not even a thing at the time. People just walked out in the street wherever they felt like it, and cars did not have dominance. And it was getting to the point where there were so many auto deaths, though, because drivers were still very dangerous, and cars themselves were dangerous as well to have around people walking, that it came to a breaking point where people wanted to exclude them from major cities. And it was going to be either that or they were going to have to take precedence. And so they got together and push these various major cities to get jaywalking laws implemented, and they basically kick people out of their own streets. So it's the Modern Moloch from 99% Invisible. Someday I'll cover that. It's a really good one. But I think that's going to do it for tonight. I think we're probably going to do Freems tonight. And we will raid right into them. So thank you all for joining me. Hope to see you guys. It's going to be this upcoming Wednesday when we get back into the theory stuff. And that is to accommodate my guests again, who will be there for We Are Many podcast. I don't know if it's just going to be Rob this time again, or if some other people will be able to join as well. But we're going to be continuing on with Chapter 3 of State and Revolution by Lenin. And I hope to see you all in the chat at that time. So this upcoming Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Hope to see you there. So until next time, friends, Lectem, and we'll raid into Freems.